All right, my next one's from Kate. And she says, a fellow believer is saying that COVID-19 is a punishment from God. What are your thoughts about that?
I don't know that. I don't know that it's a punishment from God. I do think that God allows certain things to take place in our lives to make us look up. And sometimes those can be pretty intense. And so it can be the consequences of bad behavior that, a lot of times people are going through their life and their whole life is nothing but bad behavior. And when they start getting the consequences of it, they go, oh no, why is God judging me? Why is God wipe me out? You try to wipe me out and stuff. And it's just the consequences of what you've done. But the fact that God allows consequences doesn't mean that he doesn't use them. And so there's been all kinds of people that I've talked to over the years who thought that God was judging them. And I said, I don't know if God's judging you or not. I do know that you've done stupid things, and this is what comes from doing stupid things. And I do know this, that whether God did it with you or not, what he wants is for you to pay attention. What he wants is for you to look up. What he wants is for you to stop looking, to everything else that you've been placing import in, making important in your life, and start looking at the things that really matter. Maybe you need to look at God. Maybe you need to have a relationship with him. And so I have no doubt that this could be a judgment from God on the world. I have no doubt. I just don't know that for sure. He hasn't told me that. But on the other hand, can God use this? Yeah, God can use it. And so, again, this, from what we know about this, we don't know exactly where the disease came from. We do know that ultimately disease comes from the fall. But in this instance, it looks like it may have come from eating weird animals. I put on my my Facebook page not too long ago, eat fewer bats. And so, maybe we shouldn't be eating bats, and otherwise you're going to get the consequences of those things, and you can tie that in with the Bible. But yeah, absolutely could be. Jesus said that in the last days there were going to be famines and pestilences in various places. And so what's really cool about this whole thing is how a pestilence can take and turn the world upside down. And so there have been all kinds of things that I've been looking at, as far as how the Antichrist is going to be able to step into power, and how Americans are going to give up their rights, those kinds of things. And look at what happens when a pestilence comes through. Governor Inslee says, you're going to go home, you can't work anymore. And everybody goes, okay, here we are. So pretty wild stuff.
Oh, you're getting me fired up with these comments right now. Okay, so I actually want to talk about, I have questions about that. But I also have a question about, locally I've seen a lot of people post, because we had this strange, and it was small, I mean, it wasn't like an Oklahoma thing, tornado kickoff in the Tri-Cities in Richland.
Yeah, I saw that.
We did have a 6.5 earthquake from Idaho. My in-laws live over by Lake Roosevelt towards Spokane, and they felt it. And then, of course, you have the COVID thing going on right now. I listened to a prophecy update by a Calvary Chapel pastor in Hawaii somewhere, and he's putting all this together, and without a doubt, teaching that this was total end times stuff. I mean, he took it farther than what I would have took it, but clearly there's signs there. What do you say when you have all this stuff going on right now? Is this specific to the Matthew 24s, to the this is going to happen before, like hand of God type stuff?
I think, it very well could be. I just don't know that for sure. Right. Jesus said, again, there were going to be wars and rumors of wars. Have we had wars and rumors of wars? It's like we've had 13 years of war for every 1 year of peace. And it's just getting worse as time goes on. And, it's not like World War I or World War II, but you constantly got these situations going on where people are fighting and killing each other. Now we call it terrorism, but it's just more warfare. And it's getting more and more intense as time goes on. People are getting more and more divided as time goes on. And so nation rising against nation. Those are terms that are talking about Gentiles rising against Gentiles. That's literally what that says. Many times, you can translate it that way in Greek. And so you have people groups. It's ethnos, rising against ethnos is what it is in Greek. And so ethnos is where we get our word ethnic. And so you have ethnic groups that are rising against other ethnic groups. The whole racism thing in the United States. that can be a fulfillment of that. That can be the stuff that Jesus is talking about. Usually when we talk about nations, we're thinking about United States versus Russia. Well, that's not the term. The term is ethnos. And so it's people groups. And so blacks versus whites, Hispanics versus blacks, that kind of thing. It's that kind of thing is what that can be talking about. And so can that be a fulfillment of that? Yes, absolutely. That can be a fulfillment of that. Do I know that for sure? I don't know. A good possibility. And so when I go through and look at this stuff, I think that it's important that we keep our eyes on Christ and we recognize the times that we're living in. We're living in times where I never thought that the United States was in danger of an economic collapse, or ever would be in danger of an economic collapse. And we just spent another couple of $1 trillion, and and it's just
that we don't have.
Yeah, that we don't have.
Plus interest.
And we're printing money. You can have all the money in the world and not be able to pay for anything. And so we're printing money and doing that kind of thing. The reason we can get away with it is because we're the world currency and China doesn't want us to be. And so there's all kinds of things that can happen economically. There's all economically and financially, and obviously we have the situation with the Covid-19. Whether this is a valid and appropriate response to it, we're going to find out whether it is or not. And then. There's just all these different, and the danger of nuclear proliferation. We've got all these things that are indications of the times of the end that are going on, and so this is just another one of them. The Bible talks about the fact that when the tribulation comes along, when these things are happening, that this is going to be like birth pains. And so in birth pains, my daughter just had a baby, my wife's had a baby. Obviously, I have kids. And so in birth pains, what happens is they start slow and pretty much light, and they gather in intensity, and they get more frequent. And that's what's been happening for the last 40 years. We've had all these different things that Jesus talked about happening in different areas and at different times, and maybe not as intense, but in all these things, everything is getting more and more intense, more and more frequent, and it's like one crisis after another crisis. And yeah, I think that this can be stuff that's leading up to the times of the end. Jesus said, we just answered a previous question, when you see these things beginning to happen, look up because your redemption draws near. And so again, the list was wars, rumors of wars, and nation rising against nation, ethnos against ethnos, nation rising up against nation, and famines and pestilences and earthquakes in various places. And so do we see all these things? Yeah.
So I've been a believer roughly 17 years, and I don't know how long you've been doing the prophecy update, but when I heard the first prophecy update, I was like, man, that's pretty intense. And then every year it's like a little bit more and a little bit more. 5 years ago, I'm like, he's got to be coming back. We're getting so close. And 2020 hits, and I'm like, it's another wave. It keeps getting more intense. I can't believe it.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so, and I'm like you, every year I think, this has got to be it. Jesus has got to be coming back. And the fact that it's more intense and we're still here, and it's not just intense in the same arenas. It's intense in different arenas. And so now this year we're doing pestilence. And the fact that these things are going on and it just kind of continues to ramp up, that's the grace of God, you guys. That's God getting people's attention. And I don't know if you heard about it, but the My Pillow guy apparently was at. Did you watch that? I didn't watch it.
I watched the sound bites, yeah.
Yeah. And so apparently he was at the president's press briefing, and people just went off on this dude because he had the audacity to tell people to get back to the Bible. Yeah. And it's just like you see the attitude that people have in the book of Revelation in that right there. They hate God. They hate the Bible. They hate Christians, and they make it known. And that's exactly what you see with the people who are living during the tribulation period. And so, you know, again, we're not in the tribulation period yet, but man, everything that we see around us is pointing straight at events that take place during the tribulation.
Sure.
So,
Definitely not a time to be messing around.
yeah.